We begin our look at the year that was with the culmination of an issue that gained prominence in the final months of 2015. The push to remove Peter O'Neill from the office of Prime Minister came to a head this year with the opposition successfully filing a motion for a vote of no confidence in July. The fight to file this motion started with 2 failed attempts late last year, then 2 others in May and June of this year. While the vote of no confidence was defeated in the end, the journey to get the motion before Parliament was the first real test of the government coalition and a real test for democracy in Papua New Guinea. EMTV journalist Sarah Aupong with this story.
Reasons for the lack of faith in Peter O'Neill as Prime Minister were varied, from the state of the economy to corruption, in particular O'Neill's alleged involvement in the payment of millions of government monies to Paraka lawyers. To this, O'Neill continued to maintain this stance.
I cannot, on a political witch hunt, subject myself to such ridicule when I have to undermine the office of the Prime Minister, set a precedent, Mr. Speaker.
While the opposition was pushing to file the motion for the vote of no confidence, university students took up the cause after the fraud squad was dismantled and Matthew Damaro and his team were dismissed from office. The message from the students was clear. The Prime Minister must respect the rule of law and the fraud squad be reinstated. At the University of Papua New Guinea, the boycott of classes began in the first week of May. It was only planned to go for 1 week, ending with the Prime Minister personally receiving their petition for him to step aside. The Prime Minister refused to accept the petition personally, and the initial delegation he sent was refused. Eventually, NCD Governor Powers Pakop accepted the petition. From the beginning, the University Senate refused to support the boycott. They will not allow the suspension of academic activities, but students are free to take part in protest if they wish to do so. The 1 week became 2 months of boycott and students' forum as students believed they were taking this stance on behalf of Papua New Guineans who couldn't or were not aware of the issues. As the days stretched into weeks, threats of suspension and termination of classes fueled the students' determination to continue to call for the Prime Minister to step down as they called for all Papua New Guineans to join their stance and their movement. Their attempts to stage a protest march was not permitted and police were called into the campus to provide security as reports of intimidation of other students and staff surfaced. All this tension culminated on June 8th as students gathered outside the main university gates to make their way to Parliament to witness the tabling of the vote of no confidence motion. Petrified students fled in all directions and the wounded were rushed to the hospital to another confrontation with police, but this time only words were fired. The nation came to a panic frenzy, awaiting news of the wounded. Parliament was adjourned for a couple of hours. Initial reports of deaths were reported within the country and overseas, but later found to be untrue.
Asking the question. It's a question for the students. It's not for you to answer.
When Parliament resumed hours later, a heated argument erupted over the shooting. And still the Prime Minister maintained his stance.
Stop misleading us.
Mr. Speaker, points have been made in a very democratic way, points have been answered. But yet, some people continue not to accept that. Mr. Speaker, the matter has now become a police matter and we will leave it to them. They will carry out the investigations. In the mindset of the member for Rabaul and many of his colleagues, Mr. Speaker, stepping down for what? For what? He knows very well, Mr. Speaker. He knows very well as a lawyer. There's a point of order.
Allegations have been made of serious crimes being committed. That's just the allegation. And you allow the police to move in to interview. That's not convicting somebody. No.
Okay, you are getting your debate. You have made your point. Prime Minister, continue.
Mr. Speaker, I have said all along that I will make myself available for any interview, any statement from my staff or myself on the conduct of our office in regards to the allegations that are before us. There has never been a question about that. The question is about the warrant. Why we have to run to go and get a warrant without even conducting an interview in the first place?
In the city of Leh, tensions were high as students responded to news of the shootings at the University of Papua New Guinea. Police, however, were on full alert as they worked to resolve potential violence. While there was some violence and unfortunately one death, much of the University of Technology remained intact despite the early suspension of the academic year. Scott Wyde with more.
A day after police opened fire on university students in Port Moresby, students at the University of Technology in Leh gathered to protest over the shootings. As tensions mounted inside the campus, the Leh Metropolitan Command deployed police officers to contain any potential spillover. As police maintained a presence outside the university campus, stones were hurled by students frustrated by the turn of events over the last 24 hours. Hours later, the Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Albert Schramm, invited the Metropolitan Commander, Anthony Wagambi, for a short briefing. But as the meeting was underway, students burned a vehicle outside the main administration building.
Intention to me, why me like much, help him, bring him this, one something people make him school, but make him all mama and papa and brother sister house number, ball can serve. So ball to get idea, one something no come up to contribute.
Media na everything em moglo go am kind of small talk nipla boycott na direction em mulman outside no sa.
In May, student leaders began to seek views on the course of action that should be taken by the student body.
We have challenged in our forums, in our previous forums, in the last two forums, we challenged that the NGOs, the anti-corruption groups, they must come out and speak and support the students.
In a series of forums, the issues that repeatedly came up were the amount of money the country was going to spend on debt servicing and the impact this would have on the economy and on taxpayers. They also called for the reinstatement of the director of the fraud squad, Matthew Damaru, who was suspended following attempts to investigate and arrest the Prime Minister. Unitec appeared organized and controlled. However, divisions started to appear towards the latter part of the student movement. Days after students resolved in part to return to class, violence erupted on campus between two student factions. As a consequence, a first-year student, Graham Romanong, was killed and several buildings were burned.
These other properties, this is not, it's belong to the Papua New Guineans. And we Papua New Guineans, we are the beneficiary of these properties. Burning down buildings, killing people in the campus. You're turning the university into a battlefield. And
the turn of events effectively forced the temporary closure of the university as students left for their home provinces in fear of reprisals.
Mounting public pressure seemed to give the parliamentary opposition the energy to take the fight one step further. In the end, they took out 2 Supreme Court orders to ensure the vote was eventually taken on the 22nd of July.
The first court order called a special parliament sitting to table the motion. This happened on the 15th of July. The second court order, which was obtained on the same day, ensured that the vote will be taken a week after it was tabled. It did not go down well with the Speaker of Parliament. With 1 week left, it became a numbers game, and with Ben Micah's surprise move to the opposition, it seemed anything was possible.
You'll know it on the floor of Parliament on Friday. Our number is growing, and this team will form the new government. We will establish a new Prime Minister. You will see a new government emerging out of this too.
It's not about numbers. It is about decisive leadership to stop the downward slide to hell.
I think people are very, very power hungry. Instead of focusing on the nation.
As far as I know, the government is intact.
Days later, members of the government coalition left for Alotau. As both sides fought for their numbers, Commentators advised them to vote for the good of the country. The government coalition returned to Port Moresby from Alotau, confident of their numbers. And on the day, showed that they were intact.
The Parliament will now vote, and that those who support Mr. Don Paulier move to the left, my left, and those members who do not support the motion move to the right. Honourable members, the results are as follows. Those in favour of the motion were 21, and those against the motion was 85. Honourable members, I now declare that the motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister has been negatived. It has been defeated. I will now call on Leader of Government Business.
I move that Parliament at its rising adjourn to Tuesday, 9th of August at 2 p.m., please.
Question is that the motion be agreed to. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I move that Parliament now do adjourn, please.
Question is that the Parliament do now adjourn. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Honourable members, I now adjourn Parliament.
"2016 has been a difficult year for many businesses in the country. Their main challenge was sourcing foreign currency to pay for supplies and services from abroad. The Papua New Guinea economy struggled to produce just enough foreign currency for the central bank to ration to businesses. The 2016 national budget was planned with high expectations put on the price of crude oil and minerals in the extractive industry. But when world commodity prices slumped, Papua New Guinea's economy felt the pinch. EMTV's Bethany Harriman reviews the Forex crisis this year.
In 2016, the Papua New Guinean economy went through a lot of challenges. The foreign exchange depletion, the downsizing of companies, and the drop in oil prices. The foreign currency problem began to take its toll at the beginning of the year. In March, the problem started to affect businesses. KK Kingston Chief Executive Officer Michael Kingston was one of the first business leaders to bring the issue to the forefront.
To be honest, we've tried to engage with the government, but thus far we've found it very difficult to find anyone who's willing to talk to us and to help us. So we're pretty much dealing with it just on our own. And the way we're doing that is we're having to ration payments and schedule payments and just work within the limits of what we can get from the commercial banks. That means every month there's some suppliers that go unpaid. And our debts overseas slowly get bigger and bigger. It's not for a lack of kina, it's because we can't get the US dollars and the Australian dollars as and when we want.
It wasn't just KK Kingston feeling the pinch, other businesses also did. The car dealers and other manufacturing companies, but they chose to not speak out about it. Instead, Lae Chamber of Commerce President Alan McClay spoke out about the challenges businesses faced and the likely effect it will have on the economy.
Some companies are doing it tough. They're laying off some of the workers, but some of them are really looking at whether they can keep going. And we've got to look at the history of the manufacturers, that they really started in earnest to operate in the 1980s, 1990s.
In fact, it is 28%.
It was later discussed in a business forum in Cairns, where the Prime Minister, Peter O'Neill, and Bank of PNG Governor Lloyd Bacani told business leaders that a loan facility was going to be taken out to ease the problem.
Of course, there are issues which we hear from the business community loud and clear, particularly in the availability of foreign currency. The central bank governor will be speaking later today, and of course he will expand on this issue.
Once we clear of the backlog in this short term, these facilities, as I said in various conversations, they are to clear the backlog that we have at the moment. Once you clear the backlog, that will free up the market to operate smoothly from both inflows that are coming from the exports and, of course, to meet the normal demand for imports and service payments.
While the economy was struggling to find the currency to sustain businesses, it brought to attention the lack of diversity in PNG's economy to cushion the impacts of oil prices dropping, putting national government budgets in 2016 into disarray when cash ran out.
After 4 years of housing Australian boat refugees on Manus Island, Papua New Guinea's highest court ruled the detention centre illegal. Both the Papua New Guinea and Australian governments were ordered by the Supreme Court to immediately take steps to find alternate ways to transfer the asylum seekers and close down the detention centre. The 5-man Supreme Court bench ruled that the detention breached the right to personal liberty, a right granted for in the Papua New Guinea Constitution. EMTV's Jack Lepalver Jr. has more.
The Supreme Court decision on the 26th of April this year was a distress call for the PNG and Australian governments who sealed a deal in 2012 for the detention of boat refugees on Manus Island. The decision left no opportunity for the two governments to take the order and make alternate arrangements for over 850 asylum seekers held at the Manus Regional Processing Centre. Refugees were then encouraged to take up residence at a transit centre in Lorengau and encouraged to assimilate into the local community. However, only a handful accepted to be moved, whilst the rest refused to leave the detention centre. Taking into account the negative impact the closure will have on the Manus economy, Prime Minister Peter O'Neill said the government will work with Australia to seek to minimize the effect of the fallout on businesses and workers. He says successful refugee applicants on the other end will be invited to live in PNG only if they are willing to.
We have informed the Australian minister and our officials there that our government has no choice but to implement the court's decision, and we are slowly progressing that in an orderly manner.
Negotiations are currently underway and will focus on a time frame. Nearly a quarter of refugees have been screened, with more defined as non-genuine refugees. While respecting the court decision, Prime Minister Peter O'Neill said PNG will ensure personal liberty of refugees will not be ignored.
Over 600 are deemed to be genuine refugees. The rest are not genuine refugees, just people considered as economic migrants. But many of them, a lot of them, including those who just came from Nauru for medical treatment here, have lost all their travel documents and are unable to travel out of the country. This is the predicament that we are facing. We cannot just put them on a plane and send them to a third country, because they will send them back to us.
After months of negotiations, the Australian government announced the securing of a one-off deal with the Obama administration to settle refugees held on Manus and Nauru in the US. However, details of the deal were not specified.
The US official will be on the ground to monitor the situation and also assess as to who is eligible under this exercise for resettlement.
On the contrary, the Supreme Court decision consequently affected the economy of the small island province. Roads were improved, sectors like health, education and law and order saw great improvement.
And I'm quite happy that now we've got our roads done. We're getting things built in Manus that were not there before. But still, you know, we have a feeling of emptiness here because we should have got a lot more.
But with the closure of the detention at end, Manus Governor Charlie Benjamin believes PNG and the Australian government should do more in helping Manus develop.
That all these developments come up and people are looking. and province must really work hard and fight hard on the Australian government as to how Mibla must work in and what should be done. And state law, at least Mibla is one kind of development whereby it come up. So over the years, Mibla want them also one kind of money by Kamlo province. So Mibla can help him all infrastructures from Mibla.
You're watching a review of the year 2016 in the news. This year, Papua New Guinea demonstrated the level of importance it gives to its foreign relations. PNG also sent out a clear message that it would first and foremost look out for the interests of its citizens. The year began with the Minister for Trade, Commerce and Industry, Richard Maru, declaring 2016 as the year of trade for PNG. But in the same breath, he said PNG would not sign the PESA Plus regional agreement because its proposals threatened the development of local PNG industries. EMTV's Deli Wageno with this story.
Minister for Trade, Commerce and Industry Richard Maru made two major trade announcements to the international community in January. The first was that the PESA Plus proposals threatened local industries and so PNG would not sign the PESA Plus agreement. Secondly, Minister Maru revealed a trade imbalance between PNG and Fiji, where the trading of goods and services fell in the favor of Fiji.
I didn't see any canned fish on the shelves in the supermarkets there. I couldn't even find coffee in our own hotels, our two hotels that PNG owns there. They don't even sell PNG coffee there.
A few months later, Minister Maru threatened a trade tussle with Fiji over its continued blocking of PNG products entering their country.
My department will write a letter to the minister expressing our concern and telling them if they don't respond within the next 14 days, PNG will look at serious trade measures against Fiji.
In February, the PNG government reaffirmed its commitment to assist the island kingdom of Tonga to host the next Pacific Games in 2019. This came as obvious good news to the Tongan Prime Minister, Samuela Akilisi Pohiva, who met with Prime Minister Peter O'Neill.
Tonga does not have the financial and technical capacity to host the sport.
Papua New Guinea government will support the Tongan government in the hosting of 2019 Games.
Throughout the year, a number of partnerships were signed between PNG and other countries. A sister port relationship agreement was signed between PNG Ports Corporation and China's port of Shenzhen, one of the busiest and fastest growing ports in the world. Several months later, a memorandum of understanding was signed for a sister city concept between Port Moresby and Shenzhen City. The MOU was signed between NCD Governor Poes Pakop and Mayor of Shenzhen City, She Chin. One reason for the MOU was to promote investment and trade both ways. Several world leaders passed through PNG in 2016. President of the Republic of India, Pranab Mukherjee, made an historic visit to PNG in April, the first for any Indian president. Another notable figure was the President of Zimbabwe, Dr. Robert Mugabe, who came to PNG to attend the African, Caribbean and Pacific, or ACP, Leaders Summit. Many other prime ministers and representatives of the ACP countries also attended these important meetings. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill attended several international meetings, making PNG more visible on the world stage and promoting the country's agendas. Mr. O'Neill addressed the National Press Club in Australia and, in an interview afterwards, told media that despite challenging times, PNG was managing its economy with tough decisions that have to be made, like cutting government spending but still ensuring the delivery of basic services to its people.
Today, we are meeting our obligations. We are paying for school fees. We are paying for hospital services that we provide.
The Prime Minister was in Paris in June for the first France-PNG Business Forum, where he addressed about 200 senior business people. His presentation was to ensure the French business and investment community got accurate information about PNG, promoting PNG as ideal for foreign investment.
We believe very strongly that companies that are now doing business in Papua New Guinea can reassure the business community of France that the returns for the investments they make in Papua New Guinea is quite a healthy return.
In July, the Prime Minister was also in China on an official visit. He met China's President Xi Jinping and encouraged Chinese companies to invest in PNG. He said President Xi Jinping wants to see a strengthening of PNG's industrial and manufacturing sector and to increase exports from the country into China. And as PNG prepares to host the APEC Leaders Summit, countries have begun to offer support in various areas to ensure a successful event come 2018. Japan International Cooperation Agency, or JICA, launched a technical cooperation project to support the PNG APEC Secretariat by training government officials involved in policy preparations for the summit.
This kind of capacity building is one of the crucial elements of the success of APEC 2018.
The controversial shares of Bougainville Copper Limited became hot topic in July after the company Rio Tinto transferred its 53.8% shareholding. While Rio Tinto and the national government had plans of how these shares would be distributed, the autonomous Bougainville government thought otherwise. ABG President John Momis said they would not accept any arrangement that was unfair to the people of Bougainville. Here's MTV's Fabian Hakelitz with the story.
In this year's August, Parliament sitting Prime Minister Peter O'Neill made a sudden announcement that the government of Papua New Guinea will transfer 17.4% shares of the Bougainville Copper Limited directly to landowners of Panguna Mine. However, this move disappointed both leaders of the national and autonomous Bougainville government, including people of the autonomous region of Bougainville. This BCL shares became a debatable issue in Parliament.
To ensure that part of the equity given to the ABG is actually allocated to the local people.
But Prime Minister Peter O'Neill stood firm with his decision and said the autonomous Bougainville government will not control 53% of the BCL shares. Hence, the national government has transferred 17.4% shares for the landowners and the people of Bougainville.
These shares are not given to ABG. I think that my statement very clearly stated that it is going to the landowners and the people of Bougainville.
President of the island's autonomous government, Chief John Momis, has been very vocal on this issue, saying the autonomous Bougainville government is the legitimate authority, and such move is dangerous in breach of the Bougainville Peace Agreement.
We will then invoke the provision in the Bougainville mining law to stop Bougainville Copper from operating in Bougainville.
The opposition leader Don Pollier also raised the alarm, saying issues concerning Bougainville were of sensitive and were to be treated with careful consideration to avoid another civil war.
I wanted a separate vehicle that the landowners can fully, meaningfully, directly participate in BCL.
However, these statements didn't sound well with the Bougainville government and community leaders.
Signing of peace agreement is a miracle for me when I still alive, because I work for that peace.
Then and only then we can join hands and march through referendum. That's how I see it.
Ending August, the Panguna Mine landowners met with the autonomous Bougainville government and passed 3 resolutions relating to the Bougainville copper shares. It was agreed the autonomous Bougainville government to manage the BCL shares because it's the legitimate government of the people of the autonomous region of Bougainville.
If we just discuss the commercial aspect of the mine in isolation of these considerations, then that is the recipe to creating another conflict.
A month after the Mekamwe, the representative group of the Panguna people exclusively told MTV News that they have made resolutions with the autonomous Bougainville government, which the national government must respect, and not to directly transfer BCL shares to them and their landowners, but through the autonomous Bougainville government. The Mekamwe said they fear another civil war on the island, calling on the national government to respect the ABG as the legitimate government on the ground.
Have no right, and in PNG, the national government has no right to usurp the role of the ABG. Constitutionally, it is not possible.
In the month of October, Leh and other locations in the northern region were hit hard by heavy rain and flooding. This coming on the back of a year of extremely dry weather. In Morobe, road sections were destroyed and bridges swept away, driving up the province's damage bill. More from MTV's Scott White.
After the long dry spell last year, 2016 brought with it a lot of rain. By September, the northern part of Papua New Guinea began to experience wet weather as the winds picked up and the rains fell in the highlands and the inland coastal areas. Momase and the islands region had the most rain and also suffered in terms of infrastructure damage. On the 13th of October, a small creek washed away a bridge at 11 Mile outside of Leh, cutting off traffic for over a week.
We couldn't make it through, road broke.
Yes. In inland Watut, 4 people were killed during floods, and in Boana, a bridge over the Busu River was washed away the same night. Some of the worst hit communities were not on the mainland but on the islands. On Lababia off the Morobe coast, 20 houses were washed away during floods, leaving 1 school partly damaged and several families displaced.
Making noise now. I'm not money crabs only start taking cargo and run away avoiding some of the problems so heavy.
As Morobe recovered from the impact of natural disasters, another crisis struck the provincial aviation industry. A shortage of aviation gas forced a reduction of flights into 60 airstrips in 5 provinces.
And for the last month, North Coast Aviation has stopped using F-gas. Basically, F-gas is used for the smaller piston engines, while Jet A is used for turbine-powered engines and bigger aircrafts. And these aircrafts were the backbone of our country. They used to go into places where other aircrafts can't go into.
The airstrips serviced by the Leh-based airline North Coast Aviation suffered long delays as the airline struggled with a combination of factors that prevented their scheduled flights.
Missing out law, government must look law, heavy blow fuel, now making fair enough law. Big balus now, liglik balus too, because all liglik balus am only way blow me blow move go place blow.
The drop in the kina value affected their profit margins, and the lack of aviation gas in the country forced the airline to import its fuel from Poland. The crisis dragged on for 3 weeks as teachers' travel were delayed and medical evacuations cancelled. Towards the end of the second week, the first supply of aviation gas arrived and flights resumed.
You're with the National MTV News 2016 Year in Review. The tussle for the Hela governor's seat began in late December 2015 when the Hela House of Assembly filed a motion to dismiss then-Governor Anderson Agiru. This led to a number of lengthy court cases between Como Magarima MP Francis Potape, Governor Anderson Agiru, and Koroba Kopiago MP Philip Undialu. While battling the case in and outside the courtroom, Hela's first governor, Anderson Agiru, passed away on Thursday, 28 April 2016. MTV's Jack Lepauve Jr. followed that story and has more.
The Hela House of Assembly moved the motion to unseat its first governor after a 7-day elapsed on December 22nd, after sitting Governor Anderson Agiru failed to respond to 13 points on issues affecting Hela. On 31st December 2015, Como Magarima MP Francis Potape was elected as governor. The newly elected governor said the decision is not for self-interest but for Hela people to see a new system of governing and the delivery of services.
If the entire Hela Provincial Executive Council is making this decision, then the people of Hela should see that there's something wrong and they want to fix it. If we don't fix it, they will not fix it because they're not leaders and they're not in a position to fix it.
The decision was not taken lightly as lawyers for ousted Governor Anderson Agiru filed a motion to remain in power. The battle remained in court for nearly a month before Agiru was reinstated by a Waigani National Court ruling.
For the provincial administration, for the political bureaucracy, the administration in Ella, the people of Ella should continue to work under Honorable Agiru as the mandated leader until the substantive issues are determined in February.
However, that was challenged again by Como Magarima MP Francis Potape. While the power struggle remained in court, Ella was in crisis with payback killings all around the province and disputes over the LNG benefits. On Thursday, 28 April 2016, Hela and Papua New Guinea were shocked by the passing of Governor late Anderson Agiru. Late Agiru was pronounced dead on arrival at the Pacific International Hospital after suffering a long illness.
And so, humanly speaking, you may all gonna try very best for you. But walking him come up right, but God gives and God takes.
The late governor was given a state farewell with the government heavily involved to fund his funeral before laying him to rest. His death brought Tarrytown to standstill, with other sister Highlands provinces showing their respect for the great leader.
Just to show our appreciation and how much we value the people and the leadership of Ella province.
But the passing of late Agiru did not stop the battle over the governor's seat. Como Magarima MP Francis Potape and Koroba Kopiago MP Philip Undialu continued the battle in court. In early July this year, a twist of events took place and Koroba Kopiago MP Philip Undialu was voted unopposed as governor in the morning, while the other faction of assembly members voted Como Magarima MP Francis Potape as Hela governor in the afternoon. This landed in the courts again with numerous national and Supreme Court battles between the two leaders. The case went in and out the courtrooms until MP Potape was reinstated as governor until the next national elections.
2016 has been a challenging year for the law and justice sectors. In January, Police Commissioner Gary Baki declared 2016 as the year for discipline. In the months that followed, the constabulary tried to minimize the illegal use of firearms and create a good image of the force. The PNG Defence Force had a busy year as well, conducting joint operations with the police and correctional services in preparation for the 2018 APEC Summit. This culminated in the creation of the Joint Forces College. As for the correctional service, the department came under increased scrutiny following a very public legal tussle over the office of the CS Commissioner. MTV's Tekla Gunga with a roundup of the year that was for our disciplined forces.
Following the announcement by Police Commissioner Gary Baki in January, the Royal Papua New Guinea Constabulary began executing the directive to minimize cases of police brutality and the illegal use of firearms, amongst other orders. In June, the UPNG unrest in Port Moresby saw the police force come out in full armor. Their approach was criticized by the public after they opened fire at the students in attempts to disperse the crowd. The 2016 FIFA operations was the biggest and most successful operation the police force conducted in 2016. from accommodation inspections to safety checks at the sporting venues and night operations during the football matches. The operation included over 400 police officers, half of whom were police women from around the country. The Papua New Guinea Defence Force has been involved in a lot of training and preparations for major upcoming events, beginning with the 2017 national general elections and the coordination of the 2018 security operations for the APEC summit. In September, the PNGDF Navy successfully completed exercise Kakadu in Australia, winning for the first time the minor warshipping vessel Shield. This year saw an increase in bilateral military relations with other countries, and it was the first time for PNGDF to involve US Marines in the joint training of military police. The PNGDF end-of-year parade saw 7 military personnel receive the Commander's Awards. Commanding officers of HMPNGS Siedla and HMPNGS Lakekamu were two of the ship's captains who also received the Commander's Awards for their outstanding performances during the 2016 year of operations. For the Correctional Service, 2016 was a very challenging year for the force. In January, an NEC decision to appoint Chief Inspector Bernard Nepo to replace Michael Waipo as the Correctional Services Commissioner resulted in a standoff between CS officers at the CS headquarters in Port Moresby. The fight over the office of the CS Commissioner ended when the National Court in Waigani reinstated Michael Waipo as the CS Commissioner. A number of prisons in the country will be relocated due to developments in those provinces. They include the Kavieng Correctional Centre in New Island, Boram Jail in East Sepik, and Vanimo Correctional Centre in West Sepik. And for the first time, a jail facility will be built in Kerema for the Gulf Province. At the courthouse, a number of prominent people in the law and justice sector were taken to court over allegations of abuse of office and perverting the course of justice. National and Supreme Court Judge Sir Bennett Akora and principal lawyer Tiffany Twivy were taken to court by the National Fraud and Anti-Corruption Offices on charges of judicial corruption and perverting the course of justice. However, their cases were struck out of the Waigani Committal Courts on technical grounds. The Committal Courts have also committed a number of persons to stand trial at the National Court. They include probationary constables Jacqueline Tanda and Joshua Yawija, who were accused of having forced a young woman to chew and swallow male condoms. The 6 PNGDF soldiers who were charged for the murder of a student in Port Moresby were also committed to the National Court after the Waigani Committal Court found sufficient evidence for them to go for trial. Western Governor Ati Wabiro and his 2 accomplices were sentenced to 10 years imprisonment after the Waigani National Court found them guilty of misappropriation and conspiracy of over 7 million kina. One case that captured public interest was the 13 PNGDF soldiers who were charged for mutiny under the PNG Defence Force Act. All 13 were found guilty of mutiny by the military court in June and were remanded at the Bomana prison outside Port Moresby. They had their sentences suspended because the courts found that the PNGDF administration was at fault.
This year alone, Lae City has witnessed about 20 reported armed holdups in major shopping centers. Unfortunately, many similar cases may have gone unreported. Large sums of money have been stolen by armed gang members. In the months of August and September, the number of armed robberies committed by criminals raised fear and concern among business houses. EMTV News' Martha Louise takes a look at crime in Lae City this year.
On Tuesday, 28th of September, two major business houses in Leh were hit in a span of 2 hours. The Pelgen supermarket at Eriku and the Leh International Hotel. At about 8 a.m. in the morning, 7 criminals armed with high-powered guns held up the staff of Pelgen supermarket and stole an unspecific amount of money and got away in a waiting vehicle. 2 hours later, another group of 5 armed criminals robbed the Leh International Hotel and also making off in a waiting vehicle.
When they tracked the suspects on foot into the hills band West Taraka.
7 days later, Plum Trade Hardware was hit. The criminals stole a large sum of money and escaped in a waiting vehicle. The string of robberies prompted the deputy opposition leader, Sam Basil, and Plum Trade Finance Manager Steve Fanning to come out on the media and raise concerns over the increase in criminal activities.
Not the same criminals, but different. So it's clearly showing that the criminals are having a field day in Leh at the moment.
For the average Papua New Guinean, their situation is becoming, completely untenable. People can't shop, they can't go about their business, they can't take kids to and from school.
Papindo in the center of town was also robbed some weeks after Plum Trade. Then February, a number of robberies took place. Morobe Pharmacy was also robbed. The criminals stole the pharmacy's takings and again escaped on a waiting vehicle. But the armed man left the vehicle and got onto a waiting boat and escaped. This incident was not the first where criminals used boats to escape after robbing major supermarkets in the city. The Leh International robbery saw criminals escaping on a boat after they abandoned the vehicle at Voko Point beachfront. In November last year, criminals escaped on a boat after robbing Leh's Romai 18 supermarket. This incident is also a reminder to the authorities and the business community to assist Leh police with the water policing unit. The lack of capacity and resources is making police work more difficult when it comes to pursuing criminals on boat. The lack of water policing unit in Leh and in Morobe waters has also contributed to the increase in sea piracy incidents, as police are not able to prevent armed robberies that happen out at sea. In response, the RPNGC set up a surveillance center at the Morobe patrol post area.
Mount Hagen resident judge Justice Goodwin Poole this year conducted a commission of inquiry into human rights issues raised at the Barnes Police cell block in Jiwaka Province. The inquiry was launched after a criminal matter was brought before Justice Poole at the Mount Hagen National Court involving detainees and police. One detainee had died in the cell block after he was badly beaten by a probationary constable and a senior police constable at the Barnes Police Station. The inquiry was put on hold for Christmas break, but this report shows how the police hierarchy responded. MTV's Mount Hagen correspondent Masinata Yama has this story.
Justice Poole had found out in court that the Barnes cell block was condemned in 2002, but it is still in use. He summoned Police Commissioner Gary Baki, the provincial police commanders of Western Highlands and Jiwaka provinces, Chief Superintendent Martin Lakari and Chief Superintendent Joseph Tondop to provide documents of the condemnation and explain why it is still in use. He also summoned the police minister to appear in person at Mount Hagen National Court and explain to the court his plans for the Barnes cell block. This never happened. Justice Poole's concern was the issue of the enforcement of basic human rights by detainees and why it has been ignored by relevant authorities and past successive governments.
No, I've actually been summoned by the inquiry, Commission of Inquiry, to come up here and help guide, provide some information as well too, to assist them in inquiry. And this is with regards to Barnes Police Station cell, the closure of the police, the condemning of the cell over there. And because Barnes Police Station has been a subject of a couple of police or alleged deaths happening in the cell, so I was requested to come up and assist the inquiry. That's why I'm here today. And
2 policemen were charged for willful murder and were sentenced by the Mount Hagen National Court in October 2016 to serve more than 40 years in prison for murdering a detainee. On February 15 last year, a deceased Shedrick Andrew and another man were alleged to have been badly beaten by these 2 policemen who were stationed at Barnes Police Station. According to the terms of reference presented in court, Andrew died from head injuries while in the cell block. When this matter was brought to Justice Poole's attention at Mount Hagen, he started to look into the human rights issues that arose. He found out that the cell block was condemned due to no water into the station. It also has no proper lighting, ventilation and sanitation, and may constitute a severe health hazard for the detainees, police as well as nearby communities.
I think it's important to know that the inquiry will assist. The outcome of it will have some impact on what we want to do in reforming our policies and procedures in terms of dealing with people when we put them into the cell. So I'm happy that I'm here and I'm able to answer questions that have been asked.
This forced the judge to visit the Barnes cell block in person. Upon arrival, he inspected the state of the building and tried to comprehend how the station operated in a deteriorated building. There were no books of records such as ammunition registry, and important files and details are not recorded. Police Commissioner Gary Baki appeared in person at the inquiry and admitted that the constabulary hasn't done much to change the status of the cell block after it was condemned. Baki said the constabulary is responsible, but the situation shows the inability of funding.
We will be having a symposium, and the discipline symposium basically will look at our processes and procedures in terms of dealing with discipline, particularly with handling of prisoners and putting them in the cells, which has been a problem right now, and also our neglect in terms of people being injured in the course of whether they're committing a crime and you leave them in the cells. This is one reason why the Commission of Inquiry has been called. So
Baki said all the police stations in the country are facing the same problem as the Barnes cell block because RPNGC is prioritizing projects depending on funding. Baki assured the Commission that before the 2017 national election, the constabulary will beef up and restore all the communication systems in the country.
As the government defended its stand on tuition fee-free funding, many schools remained without funding for much of the year. As the school year ended, the Morobe Provincial Education Office announced the last arrival of funds. Many of the schools have also been instructed to charge parents school fees in 2017. MTV's Julie Badiu-Owa has more on this story.
The year 2016 has been a struggle for many government agencies across the country, especially education. By the 14th of May, more than 60 elementary school teachers in Morobe province had not been paid their salaries since 2013. They were promised by the Provincial Education Division that they will be put on payroll after attending a number of trainings to become qualified. But this did not happen. The teachers have paid a fee of more than 1,000 kina to attend the trainings. When they sought clarifications at the Lay District Office, the response was negative. The Provincial Elementary Coordinator, Harin Koreka, shifted the blame to the salary section from the National Education Department. Meanwhile, many schools throughout the country which did not receive the TFF funds in 2015 saw the same thing repeated this year. The schools experienced problems due to the delay of the TFF funds. On the 28th of October this year, a primary school in Lay had to close right after the grade 8 examinations due to the delay of the payment of the TFF funds. The schools in the rural areas are suffering because they do not have funds to pay for logistics and teaching and learning resources. The 30% for infrastructure cost was to be deposited into the district's account and then to schools. On the 2nd of December, the Lay District Education Manager Kaumulaga said the district did not receive the component this year. According to the Acting Secretary for Education, Dr. Uki Kombra, the Education Department is still working on improving the TFF policy. On the 29th of July, at the launching of school facilities funded through the TFF money at a school in Leh, Dr. Kombra said the department was working closely with the Department of Finance to ensure funds would go directly to school accounts. The Provincial Education Advisor for Morobe, Keith Jiram, confirmed that most schools in the province had received the fourth quarter allocation of the TFF funds a week before schools closed.
Me harim latest one of them, TFF. Even coming set us how school will get a pass now. How by me plakisim parents by plus them all government fund him coming said na dislowly by him. And me plenty confusion. I suppose next year boss to one them now government now.
Parents and guardians of students from elementary to secondary schools in Morobe province will have to pay their children's fees in 2017. The decision was made by the Provincial Education Board this year in November due to the delay in the payment of the tuition fee-free funds.
300 kina bien minu payment. Na mista payment. Na next year government talk by putting fee blow school fee blow picnic on tap minu things by me afford by school fee.
The cancer radiation treatment machine at Angao is the only machine in the country that performs radiotherapy treatment. In October, the machine broke down. Cancer patients were put on painkillers whilst waiting for the machine to be fixed. Patients were not able to wait any longer and called on the government to intervene. Health Minister Michael Malabag later announced during the October Parliament session that 2 additional cancer specialists were recruited to expand on current services. Martha Louise with more.
Leh is the only center in the country that provides treatment for cancer patients. In October, cancer patients admitted at the PNG Cancer Unit at Angao Hospital called on the National Health Department to get the new cancer treatment machine or bring in experts to fix it. The majority of the patients were halfway through their radiation treatment when the machine stopped working. The patients were put on painkillers after the radiotherapy treatment machine stopped working. The patients who were halfway through their radiation treatment came out on the media expressing their disappointment and the urgent need for the National Health Department to fix the problem immediately. A husband of a cancer patient, Alan Connie, said they came to Leh after they were referred from Mendi Hospital. His wife had 17 more radiotherapy sessions to go when the machine stopped working.
That's all after 16 blood time I'm going to power win bagarap.
Another patient, John Murphy, had also came out on the media after he was told the machine was non-functional. Murphy was put on painkillers like the other cancer patients while waiting for the machine to be fixed.
Complain resolution, terus ramarasin na penanto da and pen tasoda and or give him pursuit to and pen tasoda or stop him na. One for a good person me pray no kasi.
Former Chief Radiation Oncologist Dr. John Niblet said the cancer treatment machine would need to undergo a major service work while the source of radiation, cobalt, needs to be replaced every 4 years. The machine was installed in 2008 and commissioned in 2009. Since then, there has never been any major service work carried out on the machine itself, as well as the replacement of the source of radiation.
But not only is the source replaced at 4-year intervals, but also there's a major service carried out actually on the machine itself. So like a car, you have to do regular servicing.
To buy a new cobalt machine would cost around 2.5 and 3 million kina. But if the machine breaks down, medical doctors from Australia are flown in to fix it. Angao CEO Dr. Christopher Kenny said the maintenance and well-being of the Cancer Treatment Center is the responsibility of the National Health Department. Dr. Kenny says more incentives should be considered when ensuring the center is fully operational and functional in serving the needs of its patients. But Henga Hospital is closely supporting the center in its efforts to ensure all patients and cases are treated. In the same month, October, in Parliament, Health Minister Michael Malabag said the cancer machine was non-operational for 2 weeks and it had taken a long time for radiotherapy unit staff to identify the problem.
The management has agreed to this transfer, but under its management they will change the cancer care system away from radiotherapy and refocus on prevention, early detection, chemotherapy, surgery, and palliative care. 2 additional cancer specialists have been recruited for Engau to expand the services currently available.
Malabag also stated that a decision was passed to hand over the management of the cancer unit to the Engau Hospital. In November, the Health Secretary met with Engau Hospital management to have the cancer unit responsibility transferred from the Health Department to the hospital management.
I will be talking with the management and the board about how to rearrange the cancer services here so that the management and board of Engau take charge.
The appointment of Papua New Guinea's first ever cardinal was a historic moment for the Catholic Church and the country. Sir John Ribat, the Archbishop of the Catholic Archdiocese of Port Moresby, was made cardinal by Pope Francis during the public consistory for the creation of new cardinals in St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican City in November. EMTV's Fabian Hakalitz has this story.
The nomination of Archbishop Sir John Ribat to a cardinal, while being good news for the churches in Papua New Guinea, is also historic. This is because this is the first time ever Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands will have a voice in Rome. Not only that, but Sir John Ribat is the first Papua New Guinean to become a cardinal and the first from the missionaries of the Sacred Heart or MSC congregation. This shows the growth and maturity of faith in Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands.
I did not know. For myself, I have no idea that I was to be chosen.
Pope Francis, during the closing of the Jubilee Year of Mercy, closed the Holy Door at St. Peter's Basilica and confirmed Sir John Ribat and 16 others during the public consistory on the creation of new cardinals. This means that they are eligible to vote in the next secret conclave to elect the new pope. Known as cardinal electors, they will vote for the new pope to head the world's 1.2 billion Catholics until the age of 80. On November 25, His Eminence Cardinal Sir John Ribat arrived to a rousing welcome at the Jackson's International Airport in Port Moresby. While it's great joy for Papua New Guinea, what matters is oneness in Christ.
Journey of faith, journey of hope, and a journey of building this unity in all levels of our life.
He will continue as the Archbishop of Port Moresby, but he will be the Cardinal of the Universal Church.
Look him now. Na me experience him, na me look him, na me got pick plan mas lo. Des la bong na ikama.
Mia mas sa mga mga hindi lo Papua New Guinea tem kamo mga cardinal lakan first of its kind lo Papua New Guinea. Lakan so mia mas take part one the members.
On November 27, after the consistory, His Eminence Sir John Ribat made his first public appearance as the first ever cardinal of Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands. This was during the 50 years Golden Jubilee, marking the foundation and the establishment of the Port Moresby Archdiocese. Among the many congratulatory notes was Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, Peter O'Neill, who commended Cardinal Sir John for his outstanding leadership.
Congratulate our first Cardinal, who is, we're all very proud of him, well deserved. Recently he was knighted by our government for his services to the country, and particularly to the church.
Cardinal Sir John Ribat comes from Volavolo village in Rabaul district, East New Britain province. He is a parishioner of St. Mary's Parish in the Archdiocese of Rabaul.
Behind some of the most notable milestones the country achieved this year were extraordinary people who will forever be honored for the legacy they leave behind. Sadly, the nation mourned the deaths of several iconic figures this year. From the media fraternity, we bid farewell to radio and TV personality Mark Sapias, and as of most recently, veteran PNG journalists Susuve Laumaya and Osea Philemon. Tonight, we pay tribute once again to their achievements.
We begin by honoring the memory of one of Papua New Guinea's greatest pioneers in the television and radio industry. The late Mark Sapias gained popularity in the early 90s as an anchor for EMTV, which at the time was the only television station providing coverage in PNG. Sapias passed on at 50 years of age early January at the Port Moresby General Hospital after an 8-year-long battle with diabetes. He wowed many with his ability to naturally ad-lib during live shows without scripts.
Ready to perform her traditional dance? Please take another sip of orchi. Relax, have a quick chat, and she'll be on in a moment.
He was quite the crowd pleaser too in his time for his spirited commentating on local and international rugby league matches.
Queensland opponents for the time being, but it's still early days, and Queensland player down in back play nevertheless, Peters.
The reality of Mark's passing was barely out of mind when MTV lost yet another respected figure 3 months later.
Keep the camera
John
rolling.
Taylor was MTV's second CEO and the longest serving, and in his time expanded the station's coverage throughout the country substantially. Towards the end of April, the country lost yet another influential figure, the Hela governor Anderson Aikiru. He was the first governor for Hela province and known as the favorite son of the Hela people. The announcement of his untimely death drew people in the hundreds to the Sir John Guy's indoor stadium in Port Moresby to pay their respects. On November 7th this year, the country bid farewell to its first female judge. The late Justice Catherine Davani was PNG's first woman judge to serve in the National and Supreme Court jurisdictions. Justice Davani passed away at a hospital in Brisbane, Australia, while undergoing treatment for breast cancer, sadly one of the leading causes of women's death worldwide. Less than a week later, the Deputy Speaker of Parliament and member for South Fly at the time, Ida Ganassi, collapsed at his home in Waigani. His sudden death coincided with November's parliamentary seating, and a day before he had been appointed to orchestrate it, throwing the government into a brief scramble to restore order. He was also a member of the People's National Congress Party, led by the current Prime Minister Peter O'Neill. Not too many days ago, PNG lost one of its mother figures and wife to former Governor-General Sir Paulius Matane, Lady Kaludia Matane. Lady Kaludia passed away at the Vunupope Hospital in East New Britain province. On the international scene, the Academy Award and Grammy Award-winning singer known for Purple Rain, Kiss and many other hits passed away.
I am the greatest.
Muhammad Ali died on the 3rd of June, the world's greatest boxer, aged 94. Nicknamed the Greatest, he was involved in several historic boxing matches. He was widely regarded as one of the most celebrated sports figures of the 20th century. Former Cuban President Fidel Castro was another leader figure forced to abandon his post as President of Cuba due to an intestinal ailment. He ceded power to his younger brother Raúl, the current president. Sadly, Castro passed away on November 25th at the age of 90.
You're watching EMTV News 2016, the year in review. In sports, it can truly be said that the year 2016 was the year of football for PNG. We began the year with four-time Pacific Games gold medalist Papua New Guinea preparing to go head-to-head against New Zealand. MTV's Jeremy Moggy with PNG's Year of Football.
The senior national women's team was still reeling from the shock departure of previous coach Gary Phillips and the decision that trainer Rachel Waduna would take the reins of the Pacific Queens had placed her and her squad under pressure.
Though New Zealand was a better team, my girls played right from the beginning till the end. They never gave up.
Even before the match, the body language of a team relatively left to fend for themselves was demoralizing. And the 7-1 scoreline that followed even more so. Despite the loss, however, it only brought to light the less glamorous side of PNG football. For Papua New Guinea, the chance to reach the pinnacle of success had been a long, hard road, and one that is yet to be fully realized. Much of the focus, however, would soon shift to the men. The Telecom National Soccer League would embark on a new two-conference first and second qualifying tier approach. While the Northern Conference had tighter, closer matches in the South, it was relatively one-way traffic.
I think every single coach has been working day and night on the psychology of the game. Every single player has to believe today that they can go home with that trophy that we just saw. They want to go home with that. They want to be the winner. They have to believe that they have it in themselves.
In terms of the OFC Champions League, that competition would open the eyes of Ley City dwellers, who, despite losing against Oceania's best, would show little nerve and garner much more respect than prior to the tournament. On the national scene, PNG would look overseas. Fleming Sritslev was the soft-spoken, true hero of the national team, instilling a new brand of creating attack, utilizing swift, direct, transitional play, and blending in the flair and flamboyance so commonly seen in the country.
More skillful players, we've had in Denmark players on absolutely world top level, but I've never had a squad so committed to what they want to achieve as with those guys here in PNG.
The FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup would capture the nation's attention. The popularity and power of football undeniable, as even the deferral of the anticipated PNG Games would be announced.
Really, Papua New Guinea and especially Port Moresby is really becoming a sporting arena where all different sporting codes are holding their semi-finals, their finals, their grand finals, their tournaments, and it really is embracing sports in a massive way here in Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea's involvement in the tournament had come about after a series of fortunate incidents. The potential host nation had initially been third on the list of probable hosts, but for the withdrawal of Sweden and South Africa, and within a blink, the second largest island in the world was now purely in the spotlight. There was a problem though. All host nations in any World Cup had always had to have a participating team. Papua New Guinea had no girls' tournaments, no academies with which to train and coach young players to groomed talent. And that in itself would be a tough challenge. But the 27th minute strike by a relatively unknown talent named Nicoletta Geva would send 6 million people into a frenzy. And the celebrations to an extent would unite the country into a single combined voice.
What a finish!
The World Cup was the dream, that wedding reception, the start of the honeymoon, as a country getting ready to step forward into the unknown. The 2016 Pacific Games was a test. The World Cup was the final exam. What a World Cup it was, a merging of talent, skill, prowess, and a multitude of eloquent verses.
There were outstanding performances by our cricketers in 2016. Our national teams, the Hebo PNG Barramundis and the CPL PNG Lewas, showed impressive performances when they took on international opponents. Adding to the successful 2016 cricket campaigns was the BSP School Cricket Development Program, which was rolled out around the country and also made a comeback in the Highlands region. Here is Dini Rose Raiko with a wrap-up of cricket in 2016.
Let's take a look at the men's team, the Hebo PNG Barramundis. It was a shaky start for them in their first unsuccessful Intercontinental Cup matches and the T20 matches against Ireland.
We knew that Ireland was a very good side, one of the top sides that is going to be playing, probably one of the next teams going to play in the test format. And to play against them and compete very well against them was a big achievement.
Using that as their learning curve, the Barras came back stronger in May when they went up against Kenya and defeated them 2-0 on home soil. The match was played at the Amini Park in the nation's capital for the World Cricket League Championship. In the lead-up to the meet with Namibia, the Barras toured South Australia to participate in the region's competition. Also known as SACA or South Australia Cricket Association League, the Barras finished second in the league campaign.
Performance from the players. Asad Vala is one of our main players, one of our star players. Led from the front. He led from the front, especially on the batting side of the Barramundis department.
The Barras went on to play Namibia in October in the World Cricket League Championship, 2 one-day internationals and the I-Cup series. The 2 consecutive wins in the WCLC alone paved way for them to secure 4th placing on the ladder.
And now they're back into building up from the fitness phase, and then gradually will build up into their skills. And I think it's going to be a short turnaround time because the next commitment is in February.
The women's national team, the CPL PNG Lewas, also triumphed this year, leading up to the 2017 World Cup campaign. After months of high-performance training earlier this year, the Lewas made a mark in the region when they defeated Japan and Samoa in June. They will compete next year at the World Cup qualifiers in Sri Lanka in February. And they are currently undergoing strenuous training under the leadership of skipper Pauke Siaka and coach Rodney Maha.
We've gone through a lot of intense training, and we are continuing to, under the sun especially, because the weather there in Sri Lanka is really hot. It's probably sometimes double what we have here in Papua New Guinea.
And to top off Cricket PNG's 2016 calendar, the BSP School Cricket Program has grown in popularity and hundreds of children are now participating in the program with a recorded total of 188,407 students from 252 schools. The Highlands region has recorded the highest number of participants with more than 37,000 in Eastern Highlands, followed by NCD.
2016 was a year that kept the whole country busy in sports. While much of the attention was given to rugby league, football and cricket, sporting enthusiasts from around the country also made time for other sporting events like volleyball, surfing, rugby union and basketball, to name a few. Not only did the country shine through its sporting achievements, but both coaches and athletes were also given the opportunity to upskill their knowledge to meet international standards.
Since a successful start early this year, Basketball PNG has been making strides in the community in search of finding new talent to represent PNG at the Under-18 Oceania Championships. This push saw 30 players selected, 15 men and 15 women, with the women's team going to Fiji and winning bronze in Division B and stopping at 8th place, while the men's team showed their win with Australia in 2 different matches played in Cairns. In surfing, after years of hard work, President of PNG Surfing Association Andrew Abel changed the face of surfing in PNG, getting the local land custodians engaged with affiliated surfing clubs around the country. One of the biggest and world-class events the association announced this year was to host the World Surf League tournament for longboarding to be staged in Medang. Proven to be one of the most popular sporting communities around the country and played by many, the code of volleyball saw talent converge in Port Moresby, bringing together top players from around the country to represent their provinces and districts at the national championships. After the success of the 2015 Pacific Games, PNG Swimming Inc. is now preparing for yet another big event, the Oceania Swimming Championships, after it was announced by Minister for Sports Justin Tichenko and donating 600,000 kina to help the swimming fraternity to prepare for the event to be hosted in 2018. In Rugby Union, and Jonah Lomu Cup was another significant achievement for PNG. The eventful tournament was hailed a success, celebrating a legacy that will remain forever, creating ties between Australia, New Zealand and Papua New Guinea. Still on Rugby Union, and Hong Kong Nations Cup was also a great way to end the 2016 season as PNG Pukpuks played against some of the best rugby teams from around the Asia Pacific. Prior to the 15th tournament, both men and women's team travelled to Fiji for the Oceania Champs and the qualifiers. While in tennis, cutting down her world rankings this year was tennis star Abigail Tere Apisa from 900 to 500 sports, hoping to cut more in next year's tournament, another achievement worth celebrating for tennis in PNG. After missing from the scene, Stephen Curry bravely spoke to EMTV on reasons why he didn't take part at the Rio Olympics and missing training. Despite all this, he is looking forward to defending his Commonwealth title and is back in training. To Rio Olympics, and 2016 saw some of PNG's best go against the rest of the world on the track, in the pool and in the ring as they carried the red, black and gold colours of PNG with pride. PNG High Performance Sport continued their work after winning the 2015 Pacific Games, creating new programs and providing courses for both athletes and coaches in upskilling them. PNG High Performance has been reaching new heights with their programs, sending coaches and athletes overseas. Their aim now is to get all coaches and athletes ready for the Mini Pacific Games, 2018 Commonwealth Games, 2019 Pacific Games and 2020 Olympic Games.
And that was 2016, the year that was, through the eyes of the National EMTV News team. We hope you enjoyed the walk through the year with us, and we hope you all learned something new and interesting about our people and our country. The EMTV News team will be back with the news starting tomorrow night for the first bulletin of 2017. We leave you with a look at what happens behind the camera and what our journalists and cameramen go through to get it right every time. I hope you enjoy it. From the EMTV News team, safe New Year celebrations and the world's best wishes for 2017. Good night.
It's 4 days since the incident has happened.
And are currently awaiting a response.
With the construction of this news...
The accused and an accomplice.
Meanwhile, having...
For an educated society in the country.
Until the national launch.
Still rolling, still rolling.
There was this afternoon. Okay, one more.
OIC reported a total of 29 accidents over the Christmas and New Year period. This is not...
Exercise is aimed at building confidence in the young officers. Hang on.
Governor Pakop said the Ella Beach Park and the proposed APEC House.
Meanwhile, having ran under the PNC party... Meanwhile... for the elections.
It has been raining since...
In the semi-final matchups, New Zealand will take on New Caledonia at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, this Wednesday.
From expatriates that come into the country from expatriates.
This Navy vessel, Navy ship.
One more.
And filed a report to the police.
Despite the manpower problem
Meanwhile, having run for the elections under the PNC.
This is one of several places affected by floods over the past month throughout Morobe.
To 10 years imprisonment each by Justice Martin.
People are still committing to soaps and moving towards a good time for bed.
Here at the Sir John Guy Stadium in Port Moresby, Shane.
Oh, come on. Okay. But see, just talk about the background account. Okay. The matter will be had as a priority in the Supreme Court.
Sorry. Today's.
The break-in occurred around.
With this new project, it has brought change and is anticipated to bring in more spin-off benefits. Final take.
Maurice was one of the security guards who were tied.
Although this parade signifies the end of
Imprisonment by Justice Martin Pang. One more.
Education Office announced the last arrival of funds. Many of the schools have been... Sorry guys, I'm starting to lose it.
Long one kind time too, National Court is giving 5 pila year making serve long nara pila 2 pila man. Oligat su tok or some oli polima. Sorry.
Welcome back to the program. And I'm not going to say that again. Let's start it again.
Under Section 383 of the